This episode of the Two Nerds podcast was sponsored by the Nixxiom Corner Store, which is linked down below in the description, and Crendor.com, which is linked down below in the description. Guys, the channel is not monetized still, so if you want to support us, get a shirt, get a pair of Crensloth sweatpants, which I don't know if those are even in stock right now.
They might not be in stock, but other things are in stock, and I believe we got some like backup merch we're about to sell at a discounted rate to get rid of. So
well, there you go.
Yeah.
Dude. Also, we're going to be launching the coffee company here very soon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've got like I think I talked about it in the last episode. Not sure, maybe. Definitely the second to last one. But yeah, we're launching this whole little like new little coffee brand and stuff, and website's coming together. Had to take care of a bunch of paperwork. That's all done. And everything's turning out good. So I'll talk about that maybe in a future episode. And if you guys want to try some new coffee, then there you go. It's a way to support Two Nerds podcast.
Nice.
Yes. Crendor. Today, we're talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I know it's very near and dear to yours.
Yes.
And that is world building.
Yes.
World building. In books, in DnD, in role-playing, in whatever you want. Crendor chose this topic.
Yeah, you could even say the World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
How so?
Because I think one of the main reasons I love World of Warcraft is the world building, right? Like a lot of times I don't care about the story. I don't care about the characters. I don't care about Jaina being like, and then Thrall being like,
right.
I'm just like, yo, that place is really cool over there. And I just go explore it. Hence Pointless Top 10. But I've realized that in a lot of stories, not just that, but like, movies, books, like a whole bunch of things. I just love the world and the world building as my primary enjoyment out of them. So, even Lord of the Rings, like learning all the little things about Lord of the Rings, it's just being able to be inquisitive about a world and then kind of explore it and like dive into it has always been one of my favorite aspects of any type of fantasy, I guess media in general.
What is like a video game or a movie, or it doesn't matter, or book that like for you felt like the world building and like the immersive quality of it was the best? I know that's kind of like off the cuff, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a good question because I'm trying to think. There's so many things. Obviously, Lord of the Rings is one of them, which is, just like, I feel like everybody's got Lord of the Rings on their list. But I would genuinely put World of Warcraft up there, especially like old World of Warcraft based on Warcraft 3 and stuff. Because in the original game, there really wasn't that much lore, right? It was just kind of, you're in the world now, and like there's a bunch of little side stories, but those side stories were essentially just world building. Right. Like you would go down to the Mulgore, for example, and the Quillbores are there, and you're like, well, why are the Quillbores here? And to be fair, I didn't really know why the Quillbores were there. I didn't read quests. But now that I'm doing Pointless Top 10 Quillbores this week, I learned that the boar god or whatever, Amagamon, I believe was his name or something like that, he died fighting the demons at the World Tree, and so when he died, his blood was like and splattered all over, but it landed in the Barrens and Mulgore, so the Razorfen Crowl and that whole area kind of spawned from his blood, and the thorns grew out, and so they were just like, yo, this is our area, the blood god, or the boar god put his blood here and everything, and then the Tarn are like, nah, dude, we're here, and they're just like, no, get out of here.
You didn't know this?
No. I didn't I didn't like read lore or like any of that. And so researching that, I was like, dude, this is pretty sick.
I mean, to be fair, like I was a role player in WoW for many years. And so like when you're a role player, you sort of spend a lot of time learning the world.
Right.
Because if you want to like play a truly immersive character, you gotta know the world, I suppose, that the character would occupy, especially if you're playing like a night elf that's been around for like 1,000 years.
Right.
So anyway, that's cool. I didn't know that you weren't aware of stuff like that. Like, goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's one of the things where like I'm aware that everything's there and that they're fighting and all this stuff, but I'm not aware of like the why. And I think there's certain things where I'm like, oh, okay, and inquisitive about it, but the more I've kind of grown into world building and like doing it on my own, the more I am more interested in other types of world building. So I'm like, oh, why are these people the way they are? Like, for example, one video I watched about world building and fantasy stuff talked about Lord of the Rings and Rohan and how everything they do is like horses, right? Like their logo is horses. Horses are on their weapons. Horses are like spiritual to them. Like they're like, we like everything is based around horses, and it makes sense because they're like in the open plains and they're riding with horses, and like their culture is horses. And then you go to Gondor and they're very much like traditional and like stone and like defensive. And so like it's all them coming together. So it kind of teaches you like, obviously you're not just gonna have like some person like out in the middle of the grass in like the Great Plains and be like, they'll have a bunch of stone. It's like, well, where'd they get it from? Right. So it teaches you kind of, if you're going to build a world, it needs to kind of make sense where, you know, like somebody, I think it's like a lot of people write stories and they'll just kind of wing it and throw it together and be like, this looks good. I like this character doing this. I like this thing being a thing. And then people are like, wait, why do these people in the plains have stone and like all this defensive? And they're just like, I don't know. Like they have to like come up with ideas. And so when you actually world build, it gives you this solid foundation to work with on top of something to kind of lean back on and explore more for future lore and stories and stuff like that.
Right. There's a lot that I could say about Rohan and the horse cult that the writers of Rohan sort of. I mean, Tolkien was obviously a huge fan of Northern European, like pre-Christian mythology and folklore and cultures and so on and so forth. And there was certainly a huge presence of horse cults in like Northern Europe at that time. Like it was a very common thing if you were going to do a ritual sacrifice at like a religious ceremony, you would offer a horse. So lots of like horse sacrifices, and I won't go into all this, but a lot of bringing out my inner historian here, but a lot of using horses' penises in a lot of things. And I'll just leave it at that. But yes, I mean, like the whole reason why like horses were so important is just because horses were so damn important back then. You know, just not just as like a means of transportation, but warfare and so on. Like they were this advanced piece of technology. You know, the gods rode on horses. Odin rides on a 8-legged horse, for example. And so you see this reflected in a lot of like the cultures back then, and you see it even reflected in Rohan, which is a fantasy culture. Like for myself, whenever I world build, and the reason why we're talking about this, let me take a step back, is just to geek out about world building, but also to sort of maybe give you guys a little bit of a window into how we world build and what inspires us, because both Crendor and I are both writers, and I don't think you DM, but I certainly DM a lot of DnD stuff, so I have to do a lot of world building. I
have DM'd Dikea.
Oh, that's
so
right.
I built my IKEA world essentially, which wasn't like fully in depth, but it was a world within a crazy post-apocalyptic IKEA that I did construct and roleplay numerous times.
Yeah,
so I have DM.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that like years ago. I don't even know how long it's been. But some distant recording that we did forever ago. Might have even been back when we were just sitting in WoW around like campfires. In pointless locations or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but I mean, taking a step back, this is going to sound a little weird, but in my opinion, one of my favorite world building worlds, I really like Lord of the Rings, and WoW is cool and everything. But anytime I think about world building, just like that idea of it, I always think back to when I was younger and I was watching Naruto for the first time. And it's like every episode, it was like building on this magic system and the world and how it works and like the politics and so on and so forth. Like you just start off and it's just like these buttholes just running around, like doing like, gang signs at each other. And then suddenly magic happens, right? And it's like, okay. And then it expands. It's like, oh, you've got this like inner power. And it's like this combination of physical and spiritual energy. And it creates chakra. And you're like, okay. Then you learn about like these things called Kekkei Genkai, which is like, oh, like certain people, the way that chakra works in their body gives them these unique powers like Byakugan and Sharingan and stuff. And you're like, okay. And then it just like keeps going further and further. And granted, I mean, there's definitely some criticisms to be made of Naruto's world building, especially once you get a little bit older and you start looking back. It's kind of like when you look back at Harry Potter years later, you realize how ridiculous Harry Potter was. But I remember being a kid and just being so fascinated by like the Naruto world and just how it works and how it's organized and stuff, and asking so many questions like, why is it that like the ninjas with all these superpowers and stuff, why are they serving these feudal lords that are just like these dinky losers that don't have magic powers? Like, what is, I just had all these questions like, how does this work? What do these groups do, and so on and so forth, and what's the relationship between these clans? And I just asked a lot of questions growing up, and that's kind of where world building and storytelling really began for me, because when I got older, I became like a role player, and I was a role player in WoW. I just mentioned that a second ago, and I was very interested in I was very interested in, I guess you could say, like the anthropology of WoW, like how do cultures work and how do they think, and I brought a lot of things into my role play that like made sense to me, but maybe it wasn't officially WoW lore. But people seem to really like it. Like an example, just to give one, Night Elves were originally not immortal before the War of the Ancients, right? And that was like 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So they lived decently long lives because of the influence of the Well of Eternity, but they did die, just like everybody else did. And then, the War of the Ancients happens. We have the planting of Nordrassil. Nosdormu blesses the tree. The Night Elves are like its guardians, and they have immortality because of this. So they live for thousands upon thousands of years. And I thought, like, man, like what? Like how bizarre that must have been for like imagine if humanity suddenly was like everyone's immortal. Like how would that change things? Like, so I kind of made some arguments in my role playing that like Night Elves wouldn't be very like sexual, for example. Maybe they lost a little bit of that because they don't need to reproduce anymore because everyone's just living forever. Right. So why would they do that? Another thing is that once you live 2,000 years or 3,000 or 4,000 years, maybe, and this actually is based on some real history. Like maybe people would get tired of living, and there was like an unnamed kind of ceremony where someone would walk off into the woods and you would just never see them again. And like they just went and committed a very quiet suicide. Like, and that is something that I brought into the role play to kind of expand on the culture of like what it would be like to suddenly be a part of a group of people that was immortal. And like these were the kind of things that I really liked doing. And of course, years down the road, I became a DM for DnD after being a player for a while. And then I could, take world building to a whole new level. And then, of course, working on this Nixxiom and Mukluk novel and other novels. So, But I know that you're working on your novel right now, and you're doing a lot of world building, which is why you chose this topic to talk about.
Yes. And I think a lot of it is it's crazy how much goes into world building. Because I think when people start, they're like, oh, this will be easy. I'll just like make a map. I'll throw some stuff on there. Like whatever, we're good to go. But once you start really getting into it, you like keep going back and being like, well, hold on, I gotta make sure this is here. I gotta make sure that's there. And like, how are these people gonna be? And like, maybe I'll change this. And like, for example, I couldn't really settle on a map because going back to my book I wanted to write, I'm like, okay, well, I want there to be like this magical lake type thing, not like a fully magical lake, but I'm just like, okay, well, where would that be? And I'm like, okay, maybe or like how even further back, like how did it get here? Like, is it just randomly here? Is it like coming up from the center of the earth, or like the gods put it here? Like all these different things. I'm like, okay, well, I gotta figure that out. And then once I figure that out, I'm like, all right, well, what happens when you control this thing? Like, does it give you terraforming powers? Like, does it make your magic stronger, like a steroid or something? Like, does it actually give you the power to do magic, or can everybody already do magic? And so, like, once you sit down, you start asking all these questions, you're just like, there's a lot.
Right.
And so I've kind of been in that process. And the thing is, like, it's not like I'm like, oh, this is so much, like, this is, to me, it's fun. Like being like, oh man, how is this going to happen? Like, you know, how, and then it helps kind of learning about actual history. Because you're like, okay, well, if there's this really like strong resource, like, did people fight over it? Like, did somebody take control of it? Like, how would they defend it? You know, is there anybody in history that had like a really powerful resource and they defended it from all these things, or like numerous civilizations that had that happen? So it's what I've realized is that from building a world, you actually learn quite a bit about history.
Right. Like just like real life history.
Yeah, just like real life history. Because
sure,
the more you kind of look into the way diplomacy played out and the way civilizations played out and all these things, you learn like, oh, there's probably a civilization that had that happen to them, or like these people probably had that happen, or even just learning like geography and science, where you're like, well, let's put a river here, and you're like, well, why would a river be here? And you're like, right, how do rivers form? Like, and then you go like, oh, it's from mountains and the water's coming down the mountains, but you're like, how do multiple rivers form? And then you're like, well, you can. But then you can play around with it, and you're like, well, I mean, it's fantasy, so it's magic. Like, somebody could have reversed the river at some point. Now there's water going up into the mountains, and it's like messing up something. Like, there's so many possibilities, and it's just like endless possibilities. And you kind of have to hit a point where you make a decision and then just kind of run with it. And you can always come back later, but it's just, at first it was honestly like kind of overwhelming. But I think once you sit down and work it all out, it gets a lot more fun.
So are you like right now, like I know that you're working on the world building for your book. Are you just kind of in the map phase at the moment?
A little bit, because I've kind of had to take a step backward. So like in the last episode, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, I decided to work on my book again. Right. Because I went back and I was like, dude, I just got to write. And then I was like, all right, let's do this. And I realized, I was like, I can't write because I don't really know about the world. And so to me, I need that structure of the world to be there to fall back on. I can't just like write a story and then have everything be kind of not connected at all. Like I need that reference to be like, how would this character act because they're from here and it's like this, and how would this character act 'cause it's like here and from this, and they're from this family, which would, you know, and it makes it easier to write because you know about the world and where that character's from and all that stuff. So I was like, I need to just like iron out all these details about the world and world build. And so that's kind of where I've been. But again, like I mentioned, it can be overwhelming when you have so many different things to think about. And so I've just kind of been in the like, what is my actual world going to have? And so it's just a matter of figuring out the basics, I guess. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
See, Crendor and I are kind of like opposites in this regard because he's doing, like, you're writing a fantasy book, and I am as well. And for me, like, so far, I'm very far into this book already, and I have done barely any world building at all. Yep. Like, I have no map, I have nothing. And yet, just like, it's like as I'm writing the story, the world is expanding and coming to life. But at the same time, there's another novel that I was working on for a bit that I put on pause to work on this one because this one's a lot easier. And the other novel that I was writing was a historical fiction set in Denmark in maybe the 7th century, 6th century. And that was that is a really hard book for me to write because, I mean, I want it to be very historically accurate. So I actually have a Discord that I'm a part of, or that I made rather, not that I'm a part of, but it's just a Discord. I'm the only person in there, and it is just filled with nothing but notes of like Denmark in like the 6th and 7th century. I have a whole section dedicated to like animals in like the area that like my book takes place in, plant life, trees, geography, everything. Like notable like people from history, like a really, I've been reading a lot of books lately. Like I finished Culture of the Teutons for the second time recently as a big recap on that. Currently reading a book called the Germanization of Christian medieval Europe. I've been doing there's a ton of research that is going into that book, and it's not really world building, it's almost like world reconstructing. Because I want it to be like as historically accurate as possible, or at least I want to give it my best shot. It's not going to be perfect, obviously, but I'm doing what I can. But it's just interesting that like when it comes to writing a fantasy book, you're like, I can't do this unless I have like all this map and all these maps and all this information. Whereas I'm just like, nah, man, like just write. Like it's easy. The map and the info just kind of appears as you type, I guess. But that's just me.
Yeah, I think it depends on your style, because I actually thought I was like that. And then when I tried to write, I would always just kind of get blocked, or I'd write a bit and I'd be like, I don't really like that. And I would always just come back to like how are these people gonna act differently, or how's this character gonna be, or where's he even from, or why is it? And I was just like, I need references.
Right.
So that's kind of the big thing. Plus, I've been wanting to write this for so long, and I kept being like, why can't I do it? And I think that really is the reason why. So I kind of figured out that reason. But the other big thing I worked about is magic. And I've watched so many things on magic now and read so many things, because there's kind of two types of magic. There's the soft magic and hard magic.
Right.
And, soft's more like Lord of the Rings, right? Where it's just kind of, there's no real explanation for it. You just know it's there, and you believe it's there because you're like, yeah, right? Like it's in the world, the characters believe it, the wizards use it, like it's just part of the world. And so I guess Harry Potter's almost kind of like that too, in a more badly written way.
Nah, Harry Potter's definitely more hard magic.
Really?
Oh yeah, definitely. 'Cause Lord of the Rings is soft magic, because I feel like Tolkien in Lord of the Rings, I watched this really good video essay on it, and at one point I even spoke to a Catholic priest about this. But like in Tolkien's writing, with obviously Lord of the Rings is a Catholic piece of literature, so it's full of like theology and symbolisms and things like that. But like one of the things that you see in Lord of the Rings is this. Just to explain one element of Lord of the Rings magic, which maybe some people listening here maybe have never noticed before, there's a lot of emphasis on the spoken word in Lord of the Rings magic. Like in Christian theology, like God speaks things into creation, right? He's just like let there be light, and boom, there's light. Okay, he doesn't make anything out of anything. He doesn't have like this great like cosmic sex or something. Like he just speaks and it happens. And you actually see this reflected in like the Lord of the Rings and how the magic works. Like, you know, if you're reading about these great battles in the Silmarillion between like, you know, an evil character and let's say a good character, they are like singing at each other. Like they're composing poetry and shouting it at each other. Or Gandalf, even in the movies, he says, "You shall not pass." And it's like he's giving his word and speaking it out with like a great, stealing a word from Skyrim here, but thum, like you shall not pass. It's almost like he's like inscribing upon creation a law using like the strength of his word, if that makes sense. So just like the creator creates through his word, Gandalf is speaking through his word, and he's establishing a line in creation that the Balrog cannot pass. And then the Balrog is, you know, is clashing with him, you know, with his fiery sword and his whip and all this crap. And so it's like this, again, it's almost like it's like even deeper than a soft magic system. It's more of like almost like a theological magic system. Which is something that's very fascinating, especially when you read like the Silmarillion. I don't know if you've ever read the Silmarillion, but it is not always a page turner. I'll say that. You should probably take some notes while you're reading it if you ever did. But anyway, no, Harry Potter's definitely more hard because, you know, flipendo.
Well, from what I looked up, Harry Potter on Google AI, which is 100% accurate, it says Harry Potter is generally considered soft magic, but you might just be defining them differently.
What would be the difference then?
So like soft magic is, there's no real explanation to the magic. It just kind of happens and there's no like laws or crazy stuff. While hard magic is, for example, like I'm going to eat this mineral like iron and it's going to give me iron powers. Right. Like that type of thing. So like hard magic,
science behind it.
Yeah, it's much more like scientific magic. Like all of the magic has laws and reasoning and stuff like that, which a lot of people argue that hard magic almost becomes not that magical.
Right.
Because it is almost like this scientific system in a way, so it loses that magical property. Mm-hmm. But you still have the magic part of like, you don't really explain why it, or like how it happens. It's just people know like, oh, you do this and this happens. While soft magic is just like, he cast a spell. How do you do that? I don't know.
It's almost like soft magic, and this is something that this is like the kind of magic that I really enjoy, and like in stories and even in like myths, folklore and stuff. It's almost like that sort of magic invokes wonder.
It does.
It's just like, whoa, like I don't understand, but like you're not supposed to, and like that's the point. You're like Frodo watching, you know, Gandalf fight a Balrog, and you're like, whoa, what the hell is going on? But you're not really supposed to understand. This is like a battle of spiritual entities.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think another example would be like Star Wars. Like people would use the Force, right? And you're like, how's the Force work? And you're like, I don't know, but they use it. And you're like, oh, okay. And you kind of get it. And now it's actually funny because now more recently, it feels like they've tried to explain the Force. There's midichlorians, or whatever this shit it's called. I don't remember. And midichlorians, yeah. And so they're kind of trying to explain it, and that by doing that, they're making it more of a hard magic system. But it's kind of like you said, it loses some of that like mysticism or that property that makes you be like, whoa, like this is so wondrous and like crazy, and how's this work? And being like, oh, I guess that's how it works. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, I do think they both have their places, but I kind of like more soft magic, like maybe a little bit of explanation, but like I do like it more being like just this random force out in the wild. Like in my world, I thought about having my like liquid lake type of thing or whatever it is be the magical source, where it's like, oh, you inject it or drink it or whatever, and then it gives you these magical properties. And then I was like, yeah, but it just seemed like a lot to play around, and like I didn't really like how it wasn't that whimsical or mysterious or whatever. So I found it cooler to have it as like a steroid towards magic, where it's like, oh, if you inject this or drink this, it's gonna like amplify that magic that's all around them, and they can do crazy stuff. But it's almost like if they do that like a steroid, there's gonna be these big downsides. Like maybe you can blow up a mountain, but you like have to sleep for like a month afterwards because you're like, holy shit, that was insane. Like I couldn't normally do that. Or maybe you get like mutations and stuff from doing that too. Like I think it's cooler doing something like that, where it's still kind of mysterious and it's still adding something to the magic, but it's still like nobody really knows how it works.
Yeah, I like the idea of following I like the idea of a magic system, and I've even incorporated this even into the DnD campaign that I'm currently DMing. But a magic system that just operates within the idea of like there is this process that you undergo. Like, you do these things and this magical thing will then happen afterwards, but nobody understands why. It's just like, oh, if you combine like a frog leg and some grass, throw it in a cauldron, spin it around, and say these words over it, like you will create a healing potion. Why? No one knows. That's just how it works.
Yeah, and then you accept it.
Yeah, and you just accept it. It's just it's a mystery. Like, is a god doing this? Like, is there some sort of property about the grass and the frog leg that is like that creates healing powers within like the human body? You don't know. It's just this weird combination of things. Well, not weird. Even, I mean, you want it to make some sense, but yeah, go ahead.
And even like some people, I know it's somewhat of a tropey thing, but like people have it be your belief where they're like, oh, you didn't say the words right. Like you didn't believe in what you were saying, like that type of thing. Like, oh, and that feeds into it. So you really have to believe in the magic for it to be true.
Right. Yeah. Like one thing that I'm doing in my D&D campaign right now is you have certain deities that are the magical sources of certain classes and the magic that they do. Like, for example, if you play a paladin or a cleric and you're using, holy magic, right? This magic comes from the god Pelor, who is the god of the sun and healing and so on and so forth. Yet in a strange way, like, Pelor is this god of the sun and everything, and, whoop-de-doo. But yet there are people that can, it's kind of like the Scarlet Crusade, like they can use like divine fire and like holy light and stuff, the light, and yet they can use it. It can be used for wicked purposes. And yet if a paladin makes an oath and says, hey, I'm going to defend the innocent, or I'm going to be like chaste for my entire life or something like that, then Pelor, then blesses this person with greater strength and greater knowledge. Now they've advanced to a higher level and they can do divine smite now or something and light their sword on fire. But if they break this oath, they lose this ability to do this. Like they can't do it anymore until they've reconciled with the god. And yet there are other people that they don't even make oaths, and yet they can do all of this. And it's like, well, how does that work? Is Pelor actually the source of this divine power? Or what is going on here? Is it just purely intention? And so I like to introduce a little bit of like that level of, or a little bit of mystery, I suppose, into the magic system as well. Like you think you have it figured out, which is how my players felt, and then you meet somebody that completely contradicts like your conclusion. And there is an answer to all of this behind the scenes. Like I know it as the DM and as the world builder, but they don't know it, and they'll figure it out only by piecing together all the puzzles or all the puzzle pieces.
Yeah. So and I think that's really the type of story, or the type of, I guess it would be a story. D&D is essentially creating your own story.
Yeah.
That people really enjoy, because if you know everything, then that's it, right? You're like, well, I figured it out. And it's like that with shows or books or whatever it might be. And I think when people get into this process of world building too much, they will like give away everything about their world because they want you to know about it. Like they'll info dump on their world. But then if you do something like that and you kind of give a little bit of information and they're like, okay, I think I got it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but then this thing happens. And they're like, wait, what? Like people start using their brain and they start like trying to create theories. And that's when you get people at the end of, you know, books or end of TV show series or movies or whatever, and they go online and they're just like, what do you guys think? Like, let's theorize about this. And like people love doing that. And so I think that's why a lot of good writing really is leaving a bunch of stuff off the plate and just keeping it in the kitchen, because people don't need to know everything. They just need to know enough to get the story across and, you know, have that all happen. But that's another reason why I love world building and why I think I just need to do it first, because I need to know all that stuff. Right. So that's just kind of my own personal taste for it.
I think something else that's really important for world building, be it a book or a D&D campaign or, you know, a video game or just whatever it is I think that the world itself needs to have a hook. Like there needs to be something fascinating about the world that makes the person want to learn more about it and understand it. I've talked about this before in previous like Two Nerds podcast episodes, but like in my D&D campaign, I began the like session 1 is the players, they wake up in a magic circle that's been abandoned for nobody knows how long, but they wake up in this magic circle out in the woods. And they like have a, like, you know, one of the first things I did was I asked everybody, like, you know, what was your last memory like before you woke up? And it's like, oh, well, you know, this happened and this happened, you know, just going around the players. But nobody knows how they got there. And even though we've been playing the game for almost a year now, they still don't know how they got out there, or like why. Like they originally thought, oh, we were summoned here, and they met somebody who was a former sorcerer. And they said, oh, yeah, like somebody must have summoned us here. And this person explained, like, no, there's no way. Like, even the most powerful sorcerers that have existed in history only had the ability to like teleport like small objects, like maybe like an apple, like only like maybe 2 or 3 feet. Now, a person, that's impossible. There's no way. Like that level of magic doesn't exist. You guys were not summoned. And then they thought they were undead. For a while, they're like, oh, we must be undead or something. We were like, you know, whatever. But then they were able to go into like these holy places, and like, you know, the light did not burn them. And like they were like told by members of like the Church of the Luminos, like, no, you're not undead. Like you're living people. And so they're still trying to figure out like, who the heck are we? Like, where did we come from? Like, how did we get here? And I think that, you know, talking to you know, my D&D crew after like the games are over, especially when we're like smoking a cigar after a session, you know, they're it's almost like they're trying to like get it out of me. Like, you know, what, like where did we come from? Like, what is the answer to this question? And I ain't telling, but there is an answer. Like I know what happened, and there's, you know, like there's a whole thing. And right now, the players are now on a potential opportunity where one of my players, his name is Mormagil. He like one of his last memories is he was serving a captain in the military named Captain Octavian. I let him name him. And he has learned recently that, oh, Captain Octavian is actually stationed in a town nearby. So he's like, oh, crap, like I got to go ask him, like, what happened to me? Like, where have I been? Like, did I get captured? Like, what happened? And so I'm very excited to see, like, you know, the mystery will deepen just even further for him. And I don't even want to spoil anything because my wife plays D&D with us, and she's in the other room, and she might overhear it. So I don't want to spoil nothing. But yeah, the point is, I think that the world having some sort of hook is cool. I like it, like Lord of the Rings. Like you've got this very quiet, humble little shire location, and then all of a sudden enter the ring. And it's like, whoa, like, holy crap, this just became so much bigger. Naruto, going back to that, it's like, okay, it's just these ninjas that flash gang signs at each other and they shoot fireballs. And then suddenly there's this whole, like, rich tapestry of stuff from like how the magic system works and the different ranks and how you rank up in the ninja world, Chunin exams and all that crap. And you're like, okay, like this is clearly like a big thought out thing. And I like that feeling of, oh, this world is a lot bigger than what I thought. And to conclude, I'm actually working on a giant map of my D&D world right now. None of my players have seen it yet, but I'm hoping to finish it, get it printed out. It's probably going to cost a good bit because it is freaking huge. And I'm going to be like, yeah, Crendor has seen it. It
is pretty neat.
It's a piece of the world. It's not even the full thing. Yeah. But I'm excited to be like, congratulations, guys. You have explored in a year worth of playing. You've explored this like 2% of this map, this piece of the world. And like I said, Crendor's seen it, so he knows.
Yeah, and that's like I was saying, it really is cool, I think, when you have a story and then behind that story is just this insane world, which also opens the door for numerous other stories, which I think is why so many, offshoot stories come from various, things like TV shows and movies where they're like, here's what happened over here. Here's what happened before the war and after the war, and like all those different things.
Right.
But I do really like that as well. I like the world being alive, especially like with my world. I've been thinking of doing something like how I have this magical steroid type thing. And I'm like, well, what if it was like oil, right? And it kind of just came up from within the world. Maybe a god did this, like nobody knows. But like, how would these people react? Like maybe there's this big magical wizard civilization or whatever, and they just are always in search of this stuff because they're just addicted to it, like steroids or drugs. America. Yeah, they're like America. Yeah. and they're just like, we need to go out and like find this. Like we need we need more. Like we're running out, and like it doesn't just refill. Like these things just run out, and they're like, we got to go find more. And this creates this war. Or maybe that did create a war, and then they had to have some sort of law or government around it of like, all right, you're only going to get this much of this thing. And then, everybody does. And they're just like, nah, dude, let's rebel. Let's like get it back. Like that type of thing.
Right.
And then it's like, how would different cultures and different people throughout the world be, implementing this into their magics? Because obviously, there's going to be different magics all over. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about and building. But yeah, I mean, to also conclude, it's honestly a lot of fun, to the point where I can see why some people just world build and they don't even write stories. Like they just enjoy building a world. Mm-hmm. So,
or even on a smaller scale, like just building a character. I mean, every individual is a world, like in their heads, and so building a character and just thinking like, okay, who is this individual and what do they go through, and who are they today versus who were they 10 years ago. I think writing character development is a lot of fun. When I started on the Nixxiom and Mukluk book, Nixxiom and Mukluk are both kind of set in stone characters. Like Nixxiom is this kind of like big, strong, like egotist that just wants to, like, he just wants fame and glory and attention. And then Mukluk is just this cowardly, narcissistic, manipulative, greedy warlock who clearly uses Nixxiom and is not his friend. And yet Nixxiom thinks he's his best friend because Nixxiom's a little bit simple. And it's like, okay, well, where did these characters go? Like in the course of the book, like what do they learn and how do they develop by the end of it? Or who do they become by the end of the book while still being like loyal to, I guess, like their original, I guess, characters that that people know and love. Like, I didn't want to do a thing where at the end of the book, like, oh, Nixxiom and Mukluk are now best friends. Whereas like before, Mukluk thought that Nixxiom was a bumbling fool that he can use for his own gain. Now he sees him as a true and honest friend. Nah, Mukluk would never see it like that. No way. Like, or like Nixxiom becomes really smart and wise and stuff instead of being a big simpleton. No, that will never happen. So, you know, they develop in other ways. And I really like the world building of just a singular character. Personally, I think that's a lot of fun as well. And I was going to say that in regards to your idea of the magic being like oil almost, it almost would be cool to like if I was doing that, like at the risk of looking like an environmentalist to right. Like anyone who plays the game or, you know, reads the book or whatever. Like I would love to, I would play with the idea of the magic is a limited resource and it is running out. And whereas before people could use magic to do really ridiculous things, like you could use magic to like clean your house or to, you know, like transport like from one location to another. Now it's like these more major spells or unnecessary spells are like completely outlawed. Like, oh, only minor magic is permitted. Like, oh, brush your teeth or something. I don't know. Yeah. And like they have this whole like enforcement agency that exists to like monitor. And the irony is they're using an insane amount of magic to do this, but they're like monitoring everyone and spying on them to make sure that no one's using like greater magic, like, I don't know, like building a house out of thin air or something. And yet you also have this society that has been so magically dependent for who knows how many generations. And now suddenly it's like, what? I have to start a campfire? Like, how the heck do I do this? And it's almost like everyone's like clueless on how to function without this precious resource. It'd be like taking the wands away from all the Harry Potter wizards and dropping them in the Muggle world. They're like, whoa, like, how do I do this? Yeah. So that would be interesting. I'd play around with that a little bit. And I like the idea of, you know, the Big Brother is watching you. And, you know, Big Brother is telling you, hey, don't use big magic. And yet Big Brother is, you know, using this like enormous amount of magic just to stare at you constantly and watch everything that you're doing. And so it's just it's a big hypocritical thing. Yeah. And maybe in reality, the magic's not running out. It's a lie. Like, it's a big political lie. Just can have more power over people. Like, I don't know. Like, that's just an idea.
No, yeah, that is a really cool idea.
Yeah, you can steal it if you want.
All right.
All right, I will.
All right. Yeah. This becomes like a multi-million-dollar idea.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah. I
have that in my D&D world that magic is actually illegal. Because, yeah, like, well, it's like there's, to keep it very simple without going into the deep lore. Right. Long story short, you had a big empire in the north. It was very technologically advanced. Everything was great. Bada-ba, bada-ba. And then what happened is you had a bunch of like archmages and they were messing around with the arcane. And they ended up causing what's called a rift, where they accidentally, it's almost like a tear in reality from a reckless misuse of magic. And it was such a cataclysmic event. It destroyed half of the empire. Like, we're talking millions upon millions of people died. And so this huge event was so shocking to the entire world that magic is outlawed. And people that, you know, formerly practiced it as like wizards and sorcerers and so on and so forth, like they just had to completely give up their profession, and they're under like constant watch and observation by like, you know, like local governments and stuff to make sure like you are not using magic like at all, because it's just too risky. Like they've learned their lesson. And so my players, they've encountered several people who have told them like, oh yeah, I used to practice magic, but I don't do that anymore. I haven't done it for many years. Or they've met some people that still practice magic, but illegally. like enemies and stuff that aren't affiliated with anyone. And so that's something that I've done with my world personally. Just magic is illegal, but like divine magic is okay. Like magic from the gods directly, like Pelor, for example, that's fine. Or like nature magic or something like that. Like nothing, pretty much any magic from a god is acceptable, but any magic from the arcane, which is like the natural magic or magical energy of the world, that's illegal.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So anyway, are you actually at a point like where you're developing any characters right now? Like, because I know you've tried to write this book before, like several times. Like, do you have a character, like a main character or characters?
I do have characters. It's just a matter of figuring out how those characters fit into the world, if that makes sense. Like, I have one character who I want to be part of like a royal family, or it doesn't even have to be a royal family, just like a very powerful family or a civilization or whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't really know anything about them. And so I need to kind of create the world and then create them. And then I'm like, okay, now I know he fits into here, like that type of thing.
What is the, like, why do you want him to be a part of a royal family, out of curiosity?
Well, mainly just I want to be part of like a powerful family, because I want him to like just not want to do anything. So, like, I want him to,
okay.
It's one of those things where he's like this really powerful warrior or assassin. Like, he's just insanely good at what he does, but he's like, I just don't want to do it.
Right.
Like that type of thing.
Right.
But they're like, no, you have to do it. And he's like, I just don't want to do it. And then he's like, what if I just like leave and like just like go somewhere alone, like become a hermit out in the woods, like that type of thing. And so people are like, where'd he go? So I played around with the idea of like people finding him, and then he kind of aids them, almost like an Aragorn-esque type of character, but probably a little more
useless.
Yeah, well, definitely not like a king, like a,
right.
But like, just like a guy that's lost, even though he's like got everything in terms of like his physical abilities and like skill set and everything, but he's still just like, man, I don't want to do it. Like somebody is tired of their job almost.
Right.
So I really like that type of character. So like that's one that I have. So I do have like characters like that, but again, it's like I need that reference to be like, well, I need to know where he's from and like, his family and the backstory and all those different things.
I mean, it's a little bit of a like a trope, I guess, is the right word. But you could do a thing where you have this character and they were raised in luxury of some sort, be it like, son or daughter of a politician or something like that. The very, big spoiled life. Right. And, they are like, maybe like their society is almost broken up into almost like a caste society, maybe similar to like India or like, very like early like European cultures, like pre-Christian and stuff. You got like a caste system, and like this person is obviously upper class. They're part of like the elite, and then something forces them to intermingle with someone of the lowest class, and they have, of course, this superiority complex to them, like, oh, I'm better than you, and yet like this person is completely dysfunctional. Like they cannot, like they don't even know how to start a campfire. And so like they're, again, it's a trope, but like they meet a person who is of like I guess lesser breeding, and yet this like peasant is able to do all these things, and if it wasn't for the peasant, then like this royal person wouldn't be able to survive. Like maybe these people are trying to hunt him down and kill him and wipe out the royal line or something. And then you could do like, of course, that's just a basic trope, but you could do like a big spin on it of some sort to make it different.
Yeah, no, that is cool. It's just, there's so many different ways I can go with it, but it's again one of those things where like I have to create the backstory.
Yeah.
For me to kind of continue forward.
Right.
So
do you have like an idea like of like I guess the 3-act structure of like where the like what all overall is going to happen in the story?
I did, and I worked on it with the editor lady I hired and did everything with, but that was also based around a world that might be different from what I'm designing. So it's pretty much the world is going to change everything, but I have like somewhat of an idea. So like I at least have like a small guideline, but again, it's it all comes back to like designing the world, and that could still change everything. The same way that visiting youtube.com/Crendor and watching pointless top 10s could change your life.
That's true.
Immensely.
I will off topic, but on topic to what you just said. in the last Two Nerds podcast, we talked about an idea that was thrown around a few times before of me creating like a parody, if you would, of the Pointless Top 10 series on the Nixxiom YouTube channel. And you guys gave some suggestions both in the comment sections here on this YouTube channel, but like also on like my Nixxiom Discord and stuff. And I think I'm going to settle on meaningful top 10s. But I don't think that it's going to be like, the most meaningful moments in like Arthas's life or something like that. No, it's still gonna be pretty pointless, like everything that I'm gonna like be counting down, like the most meaningful trees in WoW or something, like stuff that you wouldn't normally care about. But anyway, I have a few ideas written out on my little like scripts to write document, so I'll get that thing, I'll get like the first episode out here pretty soon, and you guys will get to enjoy it. Yeah.
It's it should be fun. Yeah, we can go back and forth and see.
It's gonna be way better than Pointless Top 10. I can tell you that. Like vastly better. Like
no, I don't think so.
I think so. I mean, why would you want to watch something pointless when you could watch something that has meaning?
Because inside pointless things are treasure. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Okay. All right. Well,
I'm gonna go live stream.
Yes, it is late for you, so we will talk more about world building in the future, especially as the books progress. The only other thing that I was gonna say is I haven't gotten to work on my book recently over the past like couple of days, just because I've been dealing with real life stuff and whatnot, and also just YouTube crap. But still very, very decently far into the story so far. Have to go alter a few details back in chapter 1 just to make things make a little bit more sense in a later chapter. So doing a little bit of that world building has made me like go back to the beginning. Like, okay, I just got to add a few lines here and there, change some locations and stuff. So I got to do that. But maybe once I finish this upcoming chapter, I'll throw you the first several chapters and you can read through it and tell me what you think.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, guys, again, the channel is not monetized. Not yet. I think we're at we need 3,000 watch hours in order to monetize the channel. And we got like 1,800. So it is appreciated. Those of you guys listening to the podcast, we'll get the last 1,200 here. You know, we have a year to get within 3,000 watch hours. So we'll hit it eventually. But in the meantime, channel's not monetized, so if you do want to support the Two Nerds, just check out the links down below in the description. I'll also there's a small company owned by this this one lady in the UK that I reached out to forever ago, and we got to talking, and it's called Modular Realms, and they do like DnD tiles, like magnetic tiles and stuff. So if you guys are big fans of like D&D or whatever, I'll put them down in the description below as well, and you can use code Nixxiom for like I think it's like 5 or 10% off an order if you want to check it out. But just want to give them a shout out because she is really cool, and we've been talking a little bit recently. And anyway, she's just trying to grow her small business. I like supporting small businesses. Yeah. So anyway, I'm a small business. So yeah. Yeah. But anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. It is much appreciated. And I'll give you unless you have something else you want to say real fast, Crendor, I'll give you the last word.
See you.